30. He separates. He's to the 20, to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown, Florida State. Warwick got up third down.
Winky looking Winky. Wants to throw the knockout punch to Warwick. Warwick open. Touchdown. He does a touchdown. He did catch it. Touchdown, Florida State. Oh, Peter Warwick, how'd you do that? Kermit Whitfield to the left side. A hole to the 30. Kermit Whitfield to the 30. To the 20. 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, FSU. Kermit Whitfield. A 100-yard touchdown. Here's the snap. Winston rolling right. Throws the pass on the other. It's caught. It's caught. It's caught. Touchdown, FSU. Kelvin Benjamin.
We're doing it for everybody. We're doing it big all over the country, all over the world. And I'm proud. I'm proud to say I'm a Florida State Seminole.
This is the Garnet and Old Podcast with your hosts, Ryan Eastman and Vince Ciccarelli.
It is Thursday, it is 7 o'clock, and that's time for another edition of the Garnet and Old Show. I like to call it the Garnet and Hull Show because Vince returns from his vacation. He went to Alaska, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, and we're going to talk about a whole lot of stuff. I mean, everyone knows the College World Series is going on, and we got some conference news, some transfer news, but Vince, I want to start off with you, brother, because you were gone more than a week. You were kind of gone, I think, total in like 12 days on this trip. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I had no contacts, no inside info, but I didn't have any problem. The trip was great, Ryan, and I know you like a cruise, right? You're a cruise guy. I like a cruise. This is a very different kind of deal. You're not in the Caribbean. You don't have all the steel drum music playing, and you don't have, you got drinks. Don't get me wrong. The drinks are flowing. But unlike a Caribbean cruise where you're fighting people for a pool chair, there is absolutely no one on the pool deck when it's 40 degrees, except for maybe some little kids that maybe are from Norway, right? Mm-hmm. So the bartenders on the pool deck are like, wearing all these clothes and like headgear and all this stuff to keep themselves warm. By the way, on the Alaska cruise, the pool bar is the best place to get a drink because there's nobody there. But yeah, it's just very different, but different in a good way because the scenery, Ryan, I got to tell you, is just like nothing I'd ever seen before. It's hard to describe until you see it in person. I guess maybe if you had like an Apple Vision Pro with a panoramic around you of a glacier or whatever, maybe that would do it some justice. This is not an Apple fanboy show, but
kind of is.
But I would say the scenery, we definitely packed a lot of warm clothes. So let's just say that.
Sure. So one thing I was curious about the whole time, I guess you were kind of there, is because the pools are not busy, does it feel crowded in the inside? You know what I mean?
So the answer to that is the particular ship we were on, which is the Norwegian Bliss, was that ship was constructed in a way to kind of take advantage of an itinerary in the north, right? So the deck below the pool deck, the front of the ship, is this observation deck. And there are just floor to ceiling windows across the whole front of the ship. And that's where it got crowded.
Yeah, because people want the scenery without any of the weather.
They want the scenery without the weather. And by the way, there's a bar and food there too. So if you're trying to jockey for chairs, that would be the place that happened. And on occasion, that area seemed a little crowded. We spent a lot of time there, and I don't know. Those ships are so big. It doesn't, unless you're all trying to catch rays on the pool deck for a Caribbean cruise, or in the observation deck for this particular cruise at specific times. It never feels crowded to me.
Yeah, that's one thing I'll tell. Before we get into FSU talk, I'll tell anyone out there who's never taken a cruise, maybe thought about it, maybe thinks of it. I think the popular opinion of those who have never been on a cruise, it's like a crowded Walmart and it's just this terrible food. That's not the case unless you go on a 3-day Carnival booze cruise. But if you go on
Smaller
a
ship, older
yeah,
ship kind of thing. Yeah.
if you go on a 7 to 14 day Norwegian, Royal Caribbean, ship, you're getting probably a 4-star like hotel with amenities and as of a resort and fantastic restaurants. It's not just a
Yep.
one buffet that you have to eat out of a trough the whole week. It's not like that at all.
I mean, you can do that. You can eat out of the buffet
Yeah.
every meal if you want, but there are other restaurants that you can go to and get a reservation. I always push a cruise as being the easiest vacation you could possibly take, and because you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about your food. You don't have to worry about your drink. You don't have to worry about driving somewhere after you've had a few.
Yeah.
So
And I'm
it
sure
really
you
is.
did.
I did. I don't think I had as many as I normally would do on a Caribbean cruise, just because of the heat. You're constantly trying to stay hydrated. And the other thing before we switch over, this cruise ship happens to have a go-kart track on it.
Sure.
And-
Norwegian is famous for those now.
And it was pretty slick, man. Those things moved pretty good. A lot of fun.
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
went on
fun.
the Prima in this past February, and it has the largest track at sea, and it was took up like 3 full decks on the top of the ship.
Yeah.
It's pretty insane what they can do.
So Ryan would recommend a cruise. I recommend them as well. And if you're worried about motion sickness or whatever, unless something's really bad in the ocean, you barely feel it at all, if at all. And because you barely feel it, if you even get a little bit of motion sickness, a patch would solve that quickly. So recommend it. But we can move on. Here's to Alaska, the 49th the 49th state.
Yes, I wish we could put a patch on the weather last night, because every time I sat down on my phone to follow the Women's World Series Championship, the national championship, we are in it in the series against Oklahoma. And every time I try to follow along or bring up the live, anything, lightning delay. And then it's like, okay, it's going to, I think it originally said 9:10 or something like that. It's going to, and they got everyone back in, they kicked everyone back out. And so I don't think it finally got started off to 10 o'clock. A little too late. If an event doesn't start till after my bedtime, which is 10 o'clock, it ain't happening. But Vince, you stayed up till midnight. I didn't watch the game, but I looked at the box and everything afterwards this morning. The final score from my end when I woke up was like, oh my God, we got destroyed. But I know upon further review, and I'm sure you can attest to this, it wasn't the bloodbath that the score seemed.
Well, I mean, it almost got there. And as far as the weather's concerned, they did kick off the game, and then we basically got the first half of the first inning done, and then they sent everybody out again. Anyway.
I will say, Vince, though, I wish, because they had to have known that the storm was approaching. I mean, modern radar, the way it is, a lot of times we're sitting outside Doe Campbell, and it's like, yeah, in 2 hours we're going to be soaked. Like they know. I really wish, like, if they had an inclination that was more than 70% likely in the national championship game, that they would just postpone the series to start the next day, maybe do a doubleheader on day 2.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're the only game in town, so if they get to push it till later, because the next game is not till the next day. Yeah. They probably had a cutoff time that said if it doesn't get going by this time, we are going to move it.
No excuse, though.
No, yeah. I mean, and as far as the game is concerned, the team had, kind of muscled their way through the beginning part of the World Series. They didn't lose a game, and they're playing well, a lot of confidence. And they get into this game, and they had some opportunities early in the game to push some runs across, and they just couldn't. They couldn't get the hit at the right time, right? Oklahoma uncharacteristically had a few errors in that game.
Sure.
And so they had opportunities. The problem, though, is that once Oklahoma had a couple runs on the board, their pitcher was dealing, man, and she's maybe one of the best pitchers in the country. And so I say that because if you get a couple runs on the board, and then you are protecting a 2-run lead.
Sure.
Then you bring in your ace to close out the last couple innings, and that's fine.
Yep.
Because she can still pitch the next day because she hasn't really exhausted herself.
Yep.
So, but they didn't get to that point. So I bring that up because a lot of people online, the internet, softball coaches have come out of the woodwork, Ryan.
Yep.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Our fan base love them, right? But it is just, if you need an expert on anything, just go check with an FSU fan because they are an expert in everything. Second guessing the coach not starting the ace. Let me tell you, she's like a multiple coach of the year. Just stop with that nonsense.
Right.
The team had opportunities. They didn't take advantage of them. And so what happens then is Oklahoma kind of put a couple runs together, and then it's Katie bar the door, and there was an opportunity for them to really blow it out. But Kaylee Mudge basically stole a home run away, leaped over the fence and grabbed it. So am I disappointed? Yes, but I'm not disappointed because we didn't start our ace pitcher, and what is our coach even thinking about?
Yeah.
I'm disappointed because the opportunities were there and they couldn't take advantage of them. They have a game tonight at 7:30.
They're taking the field right now in warm-ups.
Yeah, so I mean, and Kat is the pitcher tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were going to have to win 2 games regardless, right? Yep. So why not go win this one?
Hey,
and then see what tomorrow brings.
Yeah, all you can hope for is an even series, and what a thrilling game 3 it would be, right? I have a feeling would the final game be on Friday or would it be Saturday?
Yeah, it's scheduled for tomorrow.
Okay, so if that happens, kind of feel like it would deserve maybe we meet at a local establishment or something.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, I mean, just to throw it on you a little bit, but that would be cool.
Yeah, that would. Hey, we're just making up plans right here live on the internet, and you guys and all of our viewers are a part of that. So there you go. If we'll let you know where we're going to be in case you are in the Northeast Florida region.
Vince, I'm going to let you kind of lead the way on here because I know a lot of things, recruiting and transfers. Obviously, the window of people entering the transfer has come and gone. I mean, we got a whole lot of players in the offseason, right? Some really good ones. In fact, Vince, one thing before we get into the actual transfer portal and the recruiting as a whole talk, Vince, the other day I was doing some FSU deep dives in YouTube. Sometimes you just get the itch to bring up some highlights.
Some old games? Yeah.
Games, highlights, recruiting stuff. It's kind of like whatever the next video recommended to you at the time, you're like, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to watch this, right?
Yeah.
So got deep dive into that a little bit, and I ended up, was it Nicholson, the linebacker from California?
Blake Nicholson.
Blake Nicholson. Good Lord, Vince. Have you seen those highlights?
Yes. I tend to watch recruit film, not film.
Yeah.
I tend to watch the highlights of the recruits to kind of see what we're getting, what they can do, what they're all about. But yeah, that's a fun one to watch, man.
I was watching a bunch of our recruits, just trying to refresh myself coming into the season. Now I know, he's a freshman, but boy, he sure does love to body slam people.
Yeah, I think he would fit in well in the wrestling genre.
Yeah, and Vince, there's a couple of highlights of him making a sack or stopping a pass and then picking it off and taking it to the house.
Yeah.
Because he's a running back, he's a part-time running back. And I'm looking at this man who's the size of a tree, who body slams people, and there was a couple of times where he missed a tackle and they ran past him, and he caught up with the running back down the field and tackled him in the secondary. And I'm like, well, good Lord, this guy's like a freak.
He really is, and it's going to it's going to take time. Just so we try to be the optimistic podcast or the optimistic show, but also put a little bit of realism behind it. He is a freshman.
Yeah.
I do think that he will play.
Yeah, he's got the size right now. He's not a shrimp.
Yeah, I think he will play, and I think he will be, as the season goes on, provided his body can hold up to the season. It'll be impressive as the season goes on. But that's a fun one to watch. I tend to get sucked into the there's a Twitter account, FSU Daily Plays or something like that. So every day,
and CFB.
There's always a highlight play coming out that I haven't seen in 12 years that reminds me of some good times.
You know what's funny about that, Vince, is that I follow the same account, and sometimes it'll catch me, sometimes it won't, depending on what it was or the player. Every single time, I literally stop and then end up going to YouTube and watching a full video, is
Right.
Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
Every time a Dalvin Cook highlight where it's like the play in Miami where the dirt's flying from his foot, I'm like, well, now I got to watch a Dalvin Cook highlight tape, because every time I'm like, if that man, right, had been the starting running back on the 2013 team, and Devontae Freeman was great, don't get me wrong, but that man by himself carried our team, and it was fun back then. We loved him back then, but man, even the more appreciation as time goes by, as you realize how reliant Jimbo was on one man literally saving our lives every single game. It's just amazing to go back and watch those old Dalvin clips.
Yeah. You would have loved to have him on a different team, but really, thank God he was on that team. Because
Tom McGuire needed his help.
Oh my goodness. There's just some great stuff out there, and because of the age we live in, I mean, this stuff is all available. I remember back in the day, we may have talked about this in the first season of our show, but I used to record games on VHS tape so I could go back and rewatch them.
Yeah.
And I still have some of those tapes in closets here, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's like you don't even need to record the games anymore, because you can always find them, and if you want to find a condensed game, you can find that. So, but yeah, it's always fun to do.
With is the FSU official ones, because they're always the on-field cam ones. Just not my cup of tea. I want that produced, man. I want the ESPN cam footage. I usually wish, and some people do, take the commentary of the FSU announcer from the FSU official videos and then just splice them together with the ESPN footage, and that's always the go-to. But let's get into recruiting and transfer, and I'm going to kind of let you lead the way and where you want to take this.
I think the reason why you're saying those words is because you're looking at our document here, and those are my notes from my last show. But I will say there is an update to that. I mean, Charles Lester, who's the 5-star cornerback, is still out there. He hasn't committed. So that's still one that's on the front burner, looking pretty good. I did talk about an offensive tackle. I'm gonna butcher his name here, but
can we talk about Destin Hale's interview then?
Yeah, hold on, but I just want to mention this one, Manasseh Atet. I don't know. I'm butchering his name, I'm sure, but he has actually committed to USC. This is past yesterday, I think.
Yeah, that was disappointing. It was. Yeah. But listen, we've gotten lucky with some California players recently. I mean, Johnny Wilson's from California. Michael Pittman was from California.
And as long as Alex Atkins is here, I'm not worried about offensive line. And isn't that weird to say that? Right?
Yeah,
I'm just not worried about that.
I'm really not worried about, to be just being honest, aside from minor depth concerns, I'm not really worried about anything on the team at all. Like, I think there's maybe some other podcasts that voice a few more, I guess, alarming concerns about some certain coaches on the team or their scheme, mostly on the defensive side. But I
know you're talking about. Yeah.
Just being real with everyone out there. Look at the defensive rankings last year. And if I had not let you watch last year's games, like, you don't get to watch. but I would say, hey, at the end of the year, here's where we're ranked on offense, total offense, and here's where we're ranked on total defense. You would absolutely 1000%, especially based on the last few years, like what we came from, be over the moon with a top 25 defense. We were hoping 2 years ago that we could be a top 50 defense.
Yeah.
And so I think there's people getting stuck in their head that thinking Florida State's the only one that struggles to stop all these offenses in the country when Alabama out here giving up 40 points. Oklahoma losing to TCU in the bowl. Like,
Yeah.
no one can stop anyone. It's the current college football game is built to.
It's so different.
Points. Yeah.
It's so different, and because I would say the bell curve of our fan base, like the age range of our fan base, is my generation of fans, are kind of used to the screws being clamped down by the defense back in the old days.
Yeah, stop the run, Mickey Andrews
right
defense.
Like we expect that to be the way it is, and it's just not that way. So in those times, you're like, you were upset if you gave up 15 points, 17 points. Nowadays,
under 30,
if you can keep under 25, you're doing some stuff. You're going to win a ton of games, especially with the offense that we have. So, but I know who you're referring to there as far as the defensive side of the ball, and but we do need to pick that up as far as recruiting is concerned, and but one of the things that you brought up, the linebacker is part of that, is part of making that. It's all a progression where you got to fix this part of your team, and you got to fix this part of your team, and certain parts of your team, the depth gets better and better, and the floor gets raised. This particular group, the linebacking group, they're a quality group, but they're not as deep yet.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the piece to me that we're missing there. So
well, you also got to remind people that I believe that the defensive line, starting defensive line, is a full letter grade better than last year's defensive line.
Especially if Darrell Jackson gets his waiver,
which he will. He's going to be fine.
You heard it here.
Yeah, I think that defenses across the country look a whole lot better when they're out there putting on the gas on the defensive line and making life a living, for an offensive line and a quarterback. All I have to think back, the awful year, it was an awful overall year in record, but think of Jermaine Johnson every time that year that we snapped the ball, and it was just by himself, essentially, just like we would just take joy that every time they snapped the ball, he was chasing, like literally right there behind them. The only reason we didn't win more games is because our offense couldn't score that year, or as many as we would like them to, and our secondary was getting smoked on every ball.
Right.
But all it takes is a Tatum Bethune, or like you said, getting the waiver, Fabo coming back actually healthy, where you could have two Jermaine Johnson type people on the quarterback on every play.
That's right.
If we stay healthy, all of a sudden that quarterback has 2 seconds to throw the ball and might make some pretty wild passes to the secondary.
Yeah, the opponent can't just key on one guy, right? Because there are other options there. If we add a couple more pieces to the puzzle, great. We're great. Like, stand pat, and if nothing else happens right now, we are in a good way. We are in a good way.
Let's bring up, I think, what was quietly, it's funny, Vince, I know you tagged me in it. I had seen it. But a bunch of people that we know, obviously are into college football and follow it like religiously. But I think for the average fan, they probably didn't see that quote from Brett McMurphy, right?
Yeah.
About the Big Ten. So this is making me a little nervous. It's probably making Vince very happy. Vince is probably doing a little dance in his head. All of you by now should know that I want Florida State to end up in the SEC because I want to be able to travel within reason to within 6 hours to a lot of different schools and watch Florida State play if we move conferences. But Vince here, I think mainly for the types of almost like the types of schools and the types of traditions. It seems the Big Ten has always felt more like proper to me, like old school college football, right? It's almost like you feel good. It's almost like you're going to a game with your granddad, and he's like, you're watching the game as a family, and then watching this regal football. Whereas the SEC is like, bunch of Gator country people, and
Yeah, a bunch of jean shorts and Natty Light.
So, but Vince had some very, very interesting news break from official source, like real sources in the Big Ten. Vince, you have the quote?
No, I don't have it in front of me, but
You know
I know it. It basically, he was rattling off about the fact that that AAU membership is not necessarily a requirement in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and that's a wink, wink, nod, nod there. He would say, why would you say it?
Right. Why would you say that? So the deal is, for all these years, the Big Ten, it was always, like you say, the properness of the Big Ten is like, you cannot, unless you're an AAU member, you'll never get into this conference, right?
Yeah, we're about education as much as we're about sport.
And maybe it was that way. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that it wasn't that way at some point, but times are different. And of course, they're not going to take a less than desirable academic school. They're not going to do that. But Florida State is not that. Florida State is, oh my gosh, in the last 15 to 18 years, it's been a steady climb. And there would be no qualms about Florida State joining that conference, regardless of AAU. If they had it, great, but it's not a deal breaker, and it hasn't been, to be honest with you. I don't think it has been. Yeah. The only thing that's been a deal breaker is the timing of all of this stuff.
Yeah, right.
So,
but you have to bring up what's interesting, because Vince, you might have thought this whole time it has never been a deal breaker. But for a large majority of the larger sporting press at hand, they would dismiss Florida State rumors of going to the Big Ten, but they're not AAU, so SEC is likely the landing spot. That's been overwhelmingly the reporting. So now, out of left field, because I'm telling you, like, if I'm involved in the Big Ten in any official capacity, and I got asked about schools joining and AAU related topics, if we knew who was joining it and they were all AAU, then I would just say, yeah, it's very important to us and our members, we try to stick to that. Or I wouldn't say anything at all. I would defer. But when you get asked about it and a quote comes back and the source tells you, no, it's not the end all be all, and we are looking basically at schools that are well-performing schools, but not necessarily in the AAU, you're basically telling the entire country, and by the way, you're telling the ACC and the SEC, it's open season. And I think for months, if you were to have me put my money on the table and slide it forward, I would say for months, the FSU powers that be have been in continuous talks with the SEC, the ACC, and the Big Ten behind closed doors, private meetings, private texts. And it's basically what's the best situation, when's the earliest it can happen, and how much does it cost? And whatever situation, because by the way, starting next year, teams like UCF make more than Florida State on their TV deal, okay? Florida State, it's not going to, they played nice at the meetings afterwards, and they came out and said, hey, right now, we're happy with our current situation.
Mm-hmm.
The very second they feel like they have the final information, the final, I guess, bid, right, from what can the SEC offer us, what can the Big Ten offer us, how much does it cost after going through these granted rights deals and going through the contracts in detail. Once they have those pencil pushers provide the numbers to our athletic director and president, the second they make that decision, it's not going to be long till it gets leaked out that that's what's happening. Just like it happened with Texas and Oklahoma. They were thrilled to be proud members of the Big 12.
Sure.
And, long term, they're representing the conference and everyone's happy and kumbaya. And then ESPN story randomly in the middle of the day, they're leaving in 2 years. Like it was like, JK, we're leaving tomorrow, which is crazy because like next year, Texas, I still don't wrap my mind around Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC in a year.
Right.
It's still foreign to me. It's kind of like when I saw Jimbo in Texas A&M gear for the first time. I was like,
Right. And the boots.
But yeah, in the boots with the dog and swaying.
And the swaying. Yeah.
But there's no way, Vince, that the SEC isn't responding and the Big Ten isn't responding to that. And there's a tug of war here.
Yeah, I think that I think both of the conferences are fine to stay pat right now, unless the other one starts to get some kind of momentum toward what we're talking about.
But things could unravel quick, Vince. With
they could
news because right now the idea for those of you that don't know, or it's being more than heavily rumored, I would say it's official. The Big 12 is basically finalizing, like as we speak, who's joining from the Pac-12, right? Like who's coming? Is it going to be Colorado? Is it going to be, I even heard like Buffalo. Like I've heard some wild stuff out there. But the second these kind of things start happening and things are finalized where other conferences are imploding upon themselves, it just means it's like, man, it seems like it's raining every day and then all of a sudden a thunderstorm hits. It's literally, it feels like it's momentum causing momentum, right?
Yeah, I think that as far as the Big 12 is concerned, I mean, they're kind of can be the linchpin in this whole thing right now because they are not the Big Ten and the SEC, and so they want to be thought of as an equal conference or maybe the next conference or whatever.
They want to be pretty good.
And so, but they're also not hampered by what the SEC is hampered by in the Big Ten, where it's almost like an arms race. Like no one's going to flinch. We're just going to all be calm. No one's going to do anything. But if the Big 12, which is kind of like the pesky little brother, starts poking the bear a little bit, and the Big 12 says, you know what, Colorado, Utah, whoever, let's go. Let's get this done.
With Deion there right now, like I really don't think that would have been the team unless I promise you that Deion Sanders, the diva he is, wants to march out on Colorado's press conference stage and say, I made this still happen.
Right. Right.
He wants that show. You know he does.
Oh, he does want that show. Yeah. But once if that happens, something like that happens, then that whatever was causing the Big Ten to pause on Oregon and Washington, then the Pac-12 is pretty much
done.
When you talk about open for business, it's pretty much like, hey, we've got a landing spot. You got to make a choice right now. Part of your group's already going. They're already said they're leaving.
So then Oregon to Pac-10, out to the Big 12, and Big 10 and all that.
Then at that point, then you start having the Big 10, the SEC starting to make some moves on that. I don't want to say I don't care either way because I like you said, I think I would prefer the Big 10. Most people are not in that boat. And mine is more from a spiteful side sometimes. Sometimes it's part of that. But if we ended up, if it was getting to the point where, the overtures were real and there was something about to happen and the SEC was kind of like, hey, we can't let this happen. And that's how we got in the SEC. I'm okay with that too.
Yeah.
But I won't be a flag waiver.
Yeah, you won't be chanting SEC anytime soon.
No, because anybody worth their salt doesn't do that.
Vince, last week you were gone for a little bit, and I wanted to ask you your opinion. How do you feel about that home opener being an 8:30 kickoff, Vince?
Is it 8:30? I thought it was 7:30.
Oh, no. 7:30 would have been normal and completely expected. 8:30, that means Vince and Ryan are going to be doing a post-game report at midnight.
Yeah.
I think I sent you a message. The term Category 5 maintained for a night game
Yeah.
against like
Yeah.
Clemson. I said tropical depression maintain because it's not an important game, but man, that's a long day.
You're talking about not the LSU game.
No, I'm talking about the home opener against no name
Southern
State.
Miss. Yeah. At least we're pretty confident we're going to win that game. So even if it's late in the evening, we won't be drowning our sorrows.
Well, I'm glad I got my hotel like 1,000 years ago for that game
Mm-hmm.
because they're already like
Oh yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. I think we probably do too. I don't remember if we got all that squared away, but probably should. What else we need to talk about tonight?
To be honest with you, it's kind of exciting stuff because we're like less than a month from like it actually kicking off. Like July is like ACC kickoffs and all that fun stuff. But Vince, aside from the home opener being an 8:30 kick, I do want to mention that while you were gone, I saw a report. It was on I think either USA Today or the Associated Press. It probably makes sense if Associated Press. Did you see them ranking the top 25 by their like historical how many times they've been in the preseason top polls, and then they ranked them like if you've been in ever ranked preseason number one, the AP they gave you 25 points if you were
Right.
24th. So the AP started way before Florida State was anything in college football, Vince. Just curious, where would you think Florida State would land on that list of all-time preseason AP rankings?
Oh yeah, I think I have seen this in the past, just not recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably say that we're probably like top 15.
We're 10, Vince. 10.
Okay. Yeah.
We kicked ass in the 90s. What's funny though is LSU number 11, and then Florida I think was like 13 or 14, and Miami was all the way down in like 17.
Yeah.
And Florida had like a 45-year jump start on us on that.
Most blue bloods have had
so
a 45 to 50 year.
I guessed the top 5. Like it was easy for me. Like Ohio State, Oklahoma, like all those,
Michigan, yeah,
Alabama, all those were easy. But yeah, it was interesting. I did not expect Florida State to be that high just based on how late we started winning and how long the AP poll's been around. So we were just, I mean, people forget they didn't stop trusting Florida State in the preseason until like 2005.
Yeah.
In 2005, they were like, oh no.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, but in like 2003 and 4, we were like 5, 6, 7 every. We're like just stay along sucking.
They just expected it to be a blip in the radar, but they did not realize that we were in the middle of the lost decade at that point.
I just wanted to bring that up, though. Other than that, I think that's about it for tonight.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to
warm up.
To warm up a little bit.
It's a little warmer here.
I wore all my clothes every day. I wore all my clothes every day on the cruise. But it's good to be back. Good to be back in the seat here, and hopefully, we'll see how this game goes, and we may have a little bit of a shindig to do tomorrow night.
Do you have a projector set up outside right now, Vince?
I do not have a projector set up outside right now.
I didn't know if you were having a party for this game.
No, it's just family over tonight. It's not a watching party. It's a swim. We got a little swim party going on here. But yeah, so let's have some good vibes for the team tonight. And
cheers, for
Ryan.
No matter, even if we lose tonight.
What a great season. Yeah, they've been a fun team to watch, and watch them grow. And regardless, I know they'll be disappointed if it doesn't work out, but they've been really, really a joy to watch.
Yeah.
And Ryan, thank you for handling the show last week while I was out. I tried to get on, did not work. Just to say hi.
I did mention you in the comments.
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah.
On screen.
Yeah, I heard the episode. Internet's ain't so great out there.
I wouldn't imagine so. Not in the middle of nowhere, but until Elon puts Starlink on every ship, which is happening soon.
Great.
Yeah. Other than
Great.
that, though, thank you everyone for watching out there on the Garnet and Old Show. Every Thursday at 7:00. But no inside info, no contacts, no problem.
problem.
Every Thursday. Go Knowles.
Go Knowles.